So I guess we can start. Yeah, let's go. First of all, hello and a warm official welcome for me to our webinar today in cooperation with GitLab. Um, alongside me is John Jeremiah from GitLab, Senior Product Marketing Manager, and he will guide you through the session today, which is about accelerating software delivery, keys for digital transformation. So like I said, alongside me is John Jeremiah. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you so much. I am very happy to be here. Can you hear me okay? Just make sure I have audio working.
Sounds good. I can hear you well.
Awesome.
I can also see your presentation already. So I think we are good to go. Yeah, we got some
Fan,
answer already. Yes, you are audible. Perfect. Then I would just
fan.
say, yeah, that's a start for me. I would just send it over to you, and I'm happy and looking forward to, yeah, seeing your presentation also. Have fun.
Well, I'm excited to be here, and I always ask that question at the start, having done a webinar or two to a empty room. I always want to make sure that everything is working when I start. But I'm so excited to be here today. I'm part of the GitLab team. And I want to share some insight that I've learned and that we've been learning at GitLab about what's happening in the world of digital transformation, and to offer that insight as some suggestions or ideas that might be able to help other leaders who are trying to help shape their digital transformation as where they're going. And that was the purpose of when we built this content and put it together. And I built this based upon my own experience as an IT leader and as being part of the GitLab team. Some of the things I've learned about what we do at GitLab that helps us to go fast, that has helped to accelerate our own digital transformation. So let me start with an observation. And this is an observation that I found to be a little, I don't know, concerning, I think, when I started to get into looking at where things were at. And digital transformation is often a cliche term. People throw the term around a lot, and it's often poorly defined. And I would point to some amazing work that the World Economic Forum has done around defining and looking at digital transformation across multiple different industries as to what does it really mean and why is it driving such a radical transformation in business. Because at the end of the day, you have to understand this is not about digital. It's about a business transformation in the way we work, the way we connect with our customers and deliver value. And it's introducing entirely new business models. The report I've linked in here, and the Bitly link takes you to their main page, and their executive summary is absolutely fantastic. It's great reading. They built that in partnership with Accenture, and I think it's a great reference to look at. The size of digital transformation. What is it? How big is it going to be, or what's it look like? The estimates that IDC is forecasting is this is something that's going to continue to grow and grow as organizations invest in IoT and big data and machine learning and techniques in order that they need to change their business model. But so this is a starting point for what is it, and when you look at who's doing it, and what are some of the enablers and how are they doing and what's going into, how is it going to work and what does it mean? And again, this is the World Economic Forum's perspective, and I agree with a lot of what they're talking about. And I wanted to share it as a start, so we have a form of referencing back to what does it look like. And it's about being agile and nimble, and thinking forward, and systems thinking becomes a core part of what's in here. And as I look at this and I see that the importance of technology and infrastructure readiness in order to go faster, in order to deliver value faster, is key. And the principles, I think, are also important. And so, again, I want to give credit to the group at World Economic Forum. Great content and great input, because I think it sets the stage. It sets the stage for what is it that we have to do as leaders to transform. How do we have to react to change our business to deal with the reality that things are going to be very different? I mean, consider all of the different kinds of traditional industries, from financial services and how financial services is being disrupted. How many of you make payments using your phone or send money via text? Consider the disruption of ride sharing that's taking the transportation industry and changing century-old business models and making it entirely different and forcing competition into a market which has been largely stagnant in many places. Or how the likes of room sharing and sharing accommodations has created an entire market of either Airbnb or vacation rentals or ways of sharing rooms that hotels are now competing with everyone. The image of the bookstore, the old traditional bookstore, is long gone and has been replaced by, in many places, empty shopping establishments that no longer can compete because of what's happening in a digital world. And so it's not one industry, it's every industry. Everyone in the market is faced with the challenge of who will be and where will that next disruption come from, and how will they get better? How will they go faster? And the data is, I would think, as I started to look at this and dig into it, especially at this point in 2019, that this would be top of the mind of everyone. And going back to what IDC had shared, they ran a research study last year that where people were at in their status of their digital transformation, and it was shocking to me, at least, how many of them hadn't gone beyond trying to figure out their strategy and plans, and they were researching it. Only a small fragment of those people and organizations appeared to be, from this study, seriously committed to executing on what can be an existential threat to their business. And so the real question is, how do you do that? What do we have to do? And it really involves, on many levels, adopting different ways of delivering digital value and digital services. Often it's in the form of software. And when I double click into, okay, what does this mean from a software perspective? That's my background, that's our background, is how do you deliver software faster at higher quality and more consistently? And who's doing that? And the term that we've adopted that the industry uses, I think, in many cases, and again, it's a term that sometimes people may feel is cliche, but is DevOps. And so, again, going deeper into this, looking at how are people doing, air quote, DevOps, I wanted to get a sense as to where people were at. And there was a nice article that was published on Tech Beacon. I think it was last year. Christopher Null wrote this, and he summarized, different companies that are excelling at air quote, DevOps. And we'll get into a little bit about what that means. I'll go a little further on, but it's being able to deliver faster. Speed is one of those things. Consider, Amazon is a massive organization, but they're deploying changes depending upon, when you get the data every 11 seconds. Netflix is thousands of times a day. Target being is a U.S. retail big box store, they started to embrace teaching and cultivating the concept of how do we work differently with the hosting DevOps days. Similarly, Walmart has invested in acquiring, their Walmart Labs is acquiring new technology and capabilities in order to compete in the retail industry. Another retailer, a high-end retailer, that is familiar in the US, and they're not, I don't think they're quite global. Nordstrom's, moved from being, a release cycle of every, twice a year to now they're doing it monthly, and they're going faster and faster. And as you can see, if you look at the spread of the different industries and different organizations, some of these are high-tech unicorns that are very different. Others are very traditional, and they're learning how to go faster, and they're learning how to apply the techniques of digital transformation to be able to deliver value faster and to be more responsive to their customers. Which really gets to what I think is the core of what does it mean for me as an IT leader, of the challenge as an IT leader, is that if digital transformation means going faster, the real problem I face is that a lot of times as an IT leader, I'm managing an infrastructure and I'm managing processes that are very old and aren't designed to be high speed. The steam locomotive is a beautiful image, but it's not a high-speed train. It worked. It was fantastic technology of its day, revolutionary. But if you're leading a digital transformation and you're the engineer in the locomotive and you have the need to go much, much faster, that's the challenge. That's the challenge that many business and IT leaders face, is this train of legacy technologies and processes that hold them back. Now, it's interesting, and I like the quote, about speed and velocity that I think was fantastic, and it was a series of tweets, and I love the fact that it was a series of tweets. But Mark Andreessen, who founder of Netscape, he's an investor, but he had a series of tweets. And if anybody wants the full series, the link to where it was recorded and captured is here on the slide. And I'd be happy if you tweet me, I'll be glad to tweet it back to you. But he made the observation that in the software as a service business, the advantage of being able to ship updates faster and faster is an enormous advantage. And he compared it to, what the difference was for an automobile manufacturer who can only release changes to their car once a year, comparing that to what it takes as to how fast you can make changes to a mobile phone app or a software as a service. And the power of this is that because the newer technologies of software as a service or mobile technologies are able to react and respond to the market demands, it means they're that much more able to be tuned into what their customers need and to react to it. And so he explains this in a series of 10 tweets. It's fantastic, but I think it really resonates with why we have to learn how to go faster. Now, as we go further into this, then the question I want to share, and this is the observation, this is a data point that, frankly, once I started to look at this, it's impressed me with what we do. But I think we at GitLab are doing some things that help us to go very fast as well. We're doing some things here that help us to unlock our digital transformation to be more responsive to the market. Now, how fast is fast? Now, I like when I talk about this in person with people, when I get to watch their reactions, I share the fact that we're releasing and deploying to GitLab.com over 120 times a day. Now, GitLab, we're a small company. We're less than 500 people. I think we're 480 or so as of today. And so of our 480 people, this is how fast we're updating and improving our content and making new information available on our website. And by the way, that 124 deploys per day is twice as fast as what it was 6 months ago. 6 months ago, I looked at this statistic and we were about 64 deploys a day. And similarly, our product, the GitLab, as the product, we've been releasing every month on the 22nd of the month a significant release of significant functionality every single month. And because it's an application that people can download and install, we have a release cadence. We also ship continuously to our SaaS, the version that runs and is available that we host as a SaaS. But the cadence of releases is something that we've figured out how to go faster. And it's not that we just go faster and people are ignoring us. It'd be one thing if we went faster and no one was paying attention. But this was again a data point I took earlier this week, that the adoption of different versions is that 43% of our users are on the most current, most recent versions within 2 or 3 versions, which for me at least is a remarkable data point that illustrates the value of delivering faster, that our customers, our users are consuming it fast with us. They're not sitting back and waiting. So then how do you do that? How do we go from that locomotive to this high-speed train? I know it's not a bullet train, but it's moving a little faster than that locomotive. And so I think there's a couple of key things that we do differently, and that's what I wanted to really share. And I think I have four, I might have five key things. But at the end of the day, it's all about eliminating friction. It's all about understanding what causes friction, errors and rework, and what causes those problems in your software delivery tool chain, in the way you deliver value to your customers, from a new idea to being on the customer's phone or on their web browser or in their application. What is it that slows that down? Are the silos in the organization a problem? Too many handoffs? Are there legacy ways of working and lack of visibility, or others? And so I want to double click into these and look at some of these things that we do differently that I think you can learn from and perhaps take back and think about how to apply it in your organization. So first off, one of the things we've done is we've dissolved the silos inside of GitLab and beyond digitally. Now we still have organization or org chart and responsibility, so we're not different from other organizations. We still have that. But we have adopted some practices and techniques that allow us to effectively dissolve those silos such that we can collaborate and share across the entire organization. For example, we use email, of course we do, but our persistent conversations, the email threads, have moved to Slack. They've moved into a way of having ad hoc conversations and discussions that are asynchronous. So we're not time bound by, oh, we have to be in the meeting exactly at the same time. And we have hundreds of channels that are focused on topics, just as you have hundreds, if not thousands, of threads of email in your inbox. Here we have it where it's searchable and accessible. And it means that if as a participant, I join a conversation partway through, I have the context of the whole conversation, as opposed to joining an email thread partway through where often you don't know. So persistent chat is one of the capabilities, and whether it's Slack or Mattermost or whatever tool you use, I don't think that's the key, but the key is that we're moving beyond the massive inbox to this. Now, there certainly are challenges it introduces. I won't say it's not without challenge, but it opens up enormous potential for us to collaborate and to get away from our silos and away from the silos that have such a strong way of slowing us down. We also do something different in that we tend to work in an open way. Our documents and documentation, while there certainly are times for things to be confidential, we leverage Google Drive. You could do this with Office 365, but we leverage, you can use the technology you want. We use Drive, but we use this as a way to share documents and to collaborate in real time. So for example, when we hold meetings with each other, we start an agenda document. And that agenda document is collaboratively edited in real time, forming the minutes of the meeting, where the participants in the meeting are actively participating, taking notes, all in the same document. So this way we can work together. We capture what we've talked about and what we've decided, for not only for those in the room, but for those outside of the room as well. Those who couldn't participate can come back and participate. And of course, we record many of our meetings too, if you want to watch the playback. But the point is that the sharing of documents like this eliminates the silos between teams. Now, we also think about issues, and when we try to identify and start a project or an issue that we're working on that we're going to focus on and deliver, we create an issue. And we track those issues using a style of Kanban boards that allow the people on the team and beyond to see what's happening. So this isn't just about cross teams, but these boards allow us to see what's the status of the work, who's working on it, where is it at, and where are we going. We have visibility throughout the work that we're doing through boards to keep us collaborating and working together. And between boards and managing epics and issues throughout the life cycle, that helps us to do this. Now, you might notice that this is an image of GitLab, the product, and And we use GitLab to run the company. We use GitLab to plan our work, to manage our tasks. So we leverage GitLab in the course of the work we do. I think of it as if we drink our own champagne, because it works and it helps us to be effective. So the other thing that we do, and as I talk about this, I've talked a lot about eliminating the silos between teams, and that's powerful and that's important. But I want to go one step further. Now, I came from in my past work life, I've been in product marketing in a big software company, and a lot of times I had very little visibility into the status of a specific feature or what was going to be in a specific release. The silos were in the way. At GitLab, we are open and we want collaboration. And not only that, we want the collaboration outside of the GitLab team. And this is where we've eliminated the silo between us and a prospective customer. This is a snapshot from a screen of an issue we were discussing about a future capability around value stream management. And this was from probably 6 months ago. And a gentleman, Adam, found our discussion on Google. And he was passionate about the topic of how to visualize his workflows. And he wanted us to know about the fact that we should think about including a capability called cumulative flow diagrams. And he proceeds to describe it along with providing some links. This was Adam's first contribution to the work we were doing. But because we had eliminated the silos between us and the world, we have amazing interactions and contributions from everywhere. We really believe everyone can contribute. And this is an example of it. It helps us to build the right thing. So eliminating the silos is key. And I think if I think about what do you do with this, right? I think as a leader, you have to think about how do you encourage your teams? How do you encourage the organization to share and to be more collaborative, whether it's with QA or security or compliance or marketing or even customers? It's how do you establish practices and the changes in behavior to encourage that. And so I think this is one of these opportunities that all of us as leaders have. We can change this, and if we can collaborate better, we're going to go faster. We're going to learn from each other, and we're going to go faster. So the next point of this is, while it often makes people chuckle, the reality is that little hummingbird is so much faster and more nimble than the ostrich. Its cousin, the ostrich, can't move nearly as fast or respond to things in its environment like the hummingbird can. And so at GitLab, one of the things we've done is we've moved from thinking about just small, minimum viable product or a minimum viable feature to thinking about what's the smallest change that we can possibly introduce that'll make things better. We call it MVC. Now, this really drives us to say, okay, we're going to build enough of a change that's complete and it works, and then we're going to ship it. We're not going to build a whole bunch of pieces until it's perfect and ship it, because we might be building the wrong thing. If you have the similar experiences to I've had in my career, many times we've built and built and built and released only to find that the users tell us, well, that's nice, but that's not what we wanted. And the faster you can react and release and get feedback, the faster you can start to build towards the right thing. I think of this as it's an incredibly hard concept to do. And in Agile, we break it down into sprints. And that's a part of the principle of going faster. But this really has to be part of your ethos and how you work. And I'll show you two quick examples of what we did here at GitLab. And some of these are bigger changes maybe than you might think. Last year, we started in September with a concept of a DevOps template to help people go faster, and we documented what this idea was, and then we released it when it was ready as a beta in September. And over the next series of consecutive releases, we started to add more capabilities, and you can see it in our release posts, to where 9 months later, in June, we were ready, and we said, hey, this is ready for prime time, it's GA. So we incrementally built, we got feedback, and we added, and we evolved over time with auto DevOps to now where it's a capability that's available for all of our users. It was always available for all the users, but we felt like we had gotten to the place where it was complete and we were GA. We just started a similar process around feature flags. In October, we released feature flags as an alpha that we're working on it, and it, not 10.8, but 11.8 later this month, we're going to release environment-specific flags, and we're going to continue to iterate around how that evolves. And so this principle of the way we work gets into how do we break down our ideas into small chunks that we can build and then deliver. And this is a mindset shift, and it's incredibly hard. It's one of the hurdles that I think new people who join our teams have to learn how to do small incremental changes. And they have to be comfortable with that, because ultimately it doesn't feel like a complete thing when they get started. And so from a suggestion, as you think about this, I think of this a lot like everyone has a New Year's resolution of, if you're like me, it's always, I want to lose a kilo or 5 kilos. I want to lose weight. And here, this is a case of let's make our changes lighter. Let's look at how do we go from the larger changes, larger releases, to what's the smallest thing? How can we go from being a bigger change to a smaller change, right? It doesn't have to be a massive step, but steps in this direction will help to unlock potential, because smaller changes are lower risk, they're easier to manage, they're easier to back out if there's a problem, and it gives you the ability to think and react based upon what you've learned as you go. So if you think about what's it like to develop and deliver software, and what's the work look like, a lot of times this concept of a pipeline is thrown around. And I think the pipeline is one of the most important technical things to solve for. And it's both a mindset of trust and a technology of building and automating a pipeline. Now, many times I talk to people and they may not know they may not understand exactly what I'm talking about. So I built this slide as a way to try to illustrate very simply what does it mean. And so it really means that and again, I put dev and ops on here, so that way we could at least acknowledge, see that where they fit. But from any change, whether it's code or configuration changes, any change at all to a system goes through a series of steps. We build it, or we put it together, we test it, we do some steps and activities to make sure we're in compliance of the processes and the ITIL for release management and change advisory boards, et cetera. And then someone goes and deploys it and installs it and configures it. We're done. This is the typical general way it happens. But a pipeline says, no, we're not going to do these things manually. We're going to automate as much of this as we possibly can. We're going to look at the manual tasks and manual steps that are all so often prone to error and mistake, and we're going to start to automate them. We'll automate how we do configuration such that every time we configure a part of the application, we do it from a script. We do it in a way that is repeatable and consistent from one environment to another to another. We automate the activities and steps to demonstrate process compliance. We automate testing, whether it's manual testing or security testing or functional testing. We automate the things that people would normally do in a manual review. Think about what you do when you send the application. You tell a person on the database team to validate this application can go live. What are they looking at? What are they doing? Those steps and those thoughts can be captured and automated such that the insight and the wisdom of that review team who's doing that review can be captured in a series of automated tests. So now that can be done faster, more consistently, more repeatably. Effectively, really think about the pipeline automating everything from when a change is done to when it gets to production. Some people would call this kind of an assembly line or a factory, but this pipeline is incredibly important. And at GitLab, we do this for every commit we do. So every time we do a change, we run a pipeline for our changes. So we run automated tests and security scans. Our pipeline drives configuration and deployment of the application. This is a screenshot of how, it was a change to, a feature in one of our products, on one of the products, but one of our features has gone through a series of tests, and we can see this is a case where the pipeline is running, is currently running. And this gives us insight as to what is it seeing, and is it passing all the tests, and were those tests that if it failed, we should stop? Or is this a test where it's a notification or a warning? Either way, the pipeline drives it. Not only that, the other thing that we've done, and I think is important, is we've really pushed security to the front of what we do. And so because we run security testing for all of our pipelines for every change, we now have insight from static code analysis and dynamic security testing and static security testing to look at that, to understand dependencies, to look at the security of our containers and the licenses. All of this then comes together to highlight, are there new vulnerabilities that we've discovered? And then what do we choose to do about this? Are we going to acknowledge it as perhaps it's a false positive, or perhaps it's a vulnerability that we have to open an issue and deal with to make sure that we are constantly improving our security posture? This capability of having security at the forefront of what you do is important, because often in traditional application development delivery, security is often at the end. And security often becomes a bottleneck or a barrier that prevents people from going live. And we stop and we have to decide, do we delay the release so we can fix this? And then the cost and the expense of fixing this is both incredibly expensive for the development team and disruptive, but it also potentially is disruptive to the business. Let's not put the business in that situation. Let's put security at the front and not put our business at risk. So from, what do you do about that? And I hope that you're already working on pipelines, but if you're not, as a leader, you have to understand that the pipelines are a key tool and enabler to help your teams be more repeatable and consistent, to drive improvement, and ultimately to help them go faster so they can go as fast as you want them to go. If you don't invest in your pipelines, it's going to be very hard for them to ever get there. So, as we kind of continue on and click through, there's another, I have one other technology item to share. And it really is one that is, and I think of it as infrastructure as code. People will talk about it as, everything's moving to the cloud and it's containers and Kubernetes. And I think it's incredibly important. And it's unlocked, I think, amazing potential of going faster and resolving problems that have, I won't say have plagued us in the past, but it solves so many big problems that it's important because it helps us and it'll help you as well. And so, what do I mean, when we talk about this? So, let's talk about, why am I talking about containers, right? Well, containers, they're a revolution. Containers have revolutionized the global economy. Oh, you're wondering, why am I talking about IT containers? I'm not. I'm talking about containers that transformed how we move goods around the world. It used to be a world in which, ships and stevedores would load packages in crates one at a time, and they would store them away in the ship, and the ship would pull into a port, and they would have to unload half of the ship to get things off. It was incredibly slow and labor intensive. To this revolution of multimodal transport with containers, where you put your goods into a standard size box that can go from a ship to a train to a lorry or a truck to an airplane. The containers revolutionized the ability for us to move things around because it simplified things into one package that you can manage. Managing containers isn't, there's a whole infrastructure now of managing containers. It doesn't matter what's inside the container. The same revolution is happening in the digital economy and has happened. And that's what you have to tap into and look at, because whether you choose, Docker or Rocket or Mesos, the containers have taken away the problem of managing the detailed infrastructure and managing the specifics of this server is configured this way with these things installed on it, and that one is different, and that one is different. Containers give us the ability to define a set of capabilities that run inside the container, and then we can instantiate the container with all of its capabilities or let it go away quickly and easily. It's an enormous simplification of the challenge, and allows us to manage our infrastructure as code. Now we can start to specify and roll out containers of applications and applications into the cloud using Kubernetes to manage it in a way that's faster, more repeatable, and more resilient. Now at GitLab, we're all in on Kubernetes and Docker and containerization, and we think it's helping us enormously. Here's one example of how it helps us to go faster. So when our pipeline runs, in this case, a pipeline about a design doc, the review, we call it a review application, is deployed. We take that change, we package it into a container, and we take that application, that packaged application, and that new version of the application, and we run it and we deploy it. We give it a special URL, and here this application is now running, and I can see in the pipeline, I can click on view the app, and then I get a new instance of the application with this specific change deployed. This is incredibly powerful. I don't have to wait for environments. I don't have to wait for testing. I can take this application and deploy it quickly, test it, evaluate it, have other people evaluate it. This is how I can do dynamic security testing. Because of the fact that we can containerize it and move it like that, it simplifies a lot of the work we do. It also gives us the ability to handle challenges in production. Of when you deploy an application, we can deploy applications with a canary deploys. Now we can deploy small pieces of this application and only have a subset of users have access to it, to where we only have a little bit of it deployed to a 5% or 10% of the users before we deploy to everyone. So we can start to have incremental deployments before we push to production with everything. And I mentioned feature flags earlier. We're also using feature flags so we can release a bit of an application and turn it on and see how people react to it and how it works. Use that feedback to help us develop to improve it. And if we see any issues, we can turn it off and back it away. And I expect that everyone is involved at some level of moving to containers and adopting containers. And it's from a suggestion would be keep going. If you're not, then I think it's the obvious statement wouldn't be just keep moving towards containers, but start learning and have your team focus on how to embark on using containers to go faster. Now my closing point in this journey is one that it's very close to home for me, because I've spent a fair amount of my time in my career focusing on process improvement, whether it's doing Lean Six Sigma or CMMI or different activities to help an organization deliver change and deliver value faster. And so this is I think is at the core and at the foundation of DevOps and transformation. It's about how do we improve to go faster, to deliver better with higher quality. And for me, it's Kaizen. If you've worked in the Lean and Lean Six Sigma space and the continuous improvement, the principles of the Toyota production system and how Kaizen and of driving small incremental changes can be revolutionary for how processes and how things are built, how things are delivered, completely applies to this conversation. And it's the core principle that has to be at work when driving change, because we're driving changes in order to improve the value we're delivering to our customers. And the difference between a big change versus small incremental changes is the smaller changes, you can get the feedback faster. You can start to remove those problems faster. And the spirit of Kaizen really is that change for the better. Now we do this, right? We do this in a very public and open way. For example, this is a screenshot from YouTube showing how we do a public retrospective. Remember, we break down the silos, but we hold these every time we do a release. We hold a retrospective of what did we learn, what do we get better, how do we improve, what worked, what didn't, and we together as a team learn. And in this view, you will see directors, the CEO, Sid will be in this meeting oftentimes. We will have contributions from the core team and from the larger community, because we're all here focusing on how do we improve, how do we deliver faster. And because we're working together and we're distributed, and you may notice that all these different video screens look a little different. We are a remote company. We have over 480 employees around the world in over 50 countries. We work remotely. And so part of the way we do that is we document what we've learned in our handbook, whether it's developer onboarding or what we're doing to design the product, or our release notes, or how we work across the company, is all defined in one single source of truth. I think it's over 2,000 pages of text if we were to print it all. But the point of it is the handbook is a living document that we edit and we change and we evolve as we learn together. And through this shared learning, we continue to improve and get better and go faster. And so because we're focusing on continuously improving, because we're learning from each other and documenting it, teaching each other what we've learned, we continue to accelerate and go faster. From a quick suggestion perspective, think about, how can you be the spark and the catalyst to help change your organization in small incremental ways? The principle is there. There's lots of tools that you can use to do this. DevOps, embraces continuous improvement as a part of what goes into it. But I think the opportunity is for all of us as leaders is how do we help our teams? How do we drive it, help our teams and our peers to learn one step at a time? So as a quick summary, I want to kind of wrap up. And I think we'll have a few minutes for questions as well. The key highlights. Think about your silos, address the silos, remove the friction from the silos. Think smaller changes. Automate your pipelines, frankly, automate everything. Figure out how to get away from hard-coded configurations of your servers and your infrastructure and move to containers and infrastructure as code, and then always improve. Now, we've done this as a way to accelerate. We've used these techniques to go faster. This is a snapshot of the history of our GitLab features over time, and you can see how, as we pivoted to focus on a broader spectrum of what we're doing, we've been able to accelerate the way we're shipping features. And so it's helped us. It's helped us to be successful. It's helped us to go faster. We had a very humble start, but today we've grown into a company and a product that is frankly breathtaking. And it's really about a single application to manage the entire DevOps lifecycle. Everything from planning an idea to managing the source code and automating it all the way to production. But my purpose of this presentation really isn't to demo or to talk about GitLab. My purpose was to share what we've learned. And so I'm not even going to spend I'm not going to spend any more time on this slide, frankly. If you want to learn more about GitLab, if you're interested in GitLab, and I hope you are, I think it's a very, really awesome solution. It has lots of potential. You can, type in, bit.ly/GitLab-demo and sign up for a demo, and we do it every week. On every Wednesday, we have a demo, and we'll demo the capabilities of GitLab, and you can learn some more, and it'd be awesome if you did. But I hope that you've had some takeaways and something learned, and I think we have time for some questions. If there are Q&A, I will pause here for Q&A. Let me look in the question panel and see if we've got questions. All right, I have a yes. I said somebody asked a question, yes. I think that was the question, can you hear me? Let's see. I see another question. So it's a question I get a lot from different people is that, okay, we know we have to get started with DevOps. Where should we start? So this is a question that comes up frequently, and there's multiple different answers to that question. I think the answer that I've thought is most useful was one that Kurt Bittner from Forrester offered. Was he offered the suggestion of starting with the things you do just before production, the deployment and the configuration, and working your way back upstream as one way to solve things, because Kurt believed that a lot of times the source of problems in production were in the deployment and the configuration. So that's one way to think about it. So if that, and it also depends a lot on where you have authority to change. So if you own the whole life cycle, that might be the right place to start. But if you're focused on source code management, how you work on the development side of writing and managing code, then that makes sense as the place to start. But the thing to realize is, don't do DevOps without thinking about the whole end-to-end flow. Don't optimize for your silo. Think about the end-to-end, but start. And it's about starting on continuous improvement wherever you're at. Okay, let's see. Are there other questions?
So, well, thanks. First of all, thanks for sharing this ton of insights, John. I think that not only my head is now smoking a bit, so I guess we'll take a few seconds for the people to come up with some questions. I'm not sure. I guess, are you seeing something in the panel, John? Coming up? Yeah, I think there's something. There's one question about the slides, if they are going to be shared.
Absolutely. If somebody wants the slides, we'll be happy to share them. Absolutely.
Yeah, maybe a few words for that. To all people that registered and are here online, we will, of course, in the follow-up, send you a link to the recording. And of course, like you said, John, we are also able to then forward these people the slides if they want to check back and have a second look at the content, of course.
Fantastic. Let's see, other questions. Oh, here's one. So a lot of this is a question, where's the business? What's the business's role in this, what we talked about? I've talked a lot about IT and the SDLC and software development. What about the business? And I've led an agile transformation in the past, and my experience is that this kind of transformation is not just IT. It's not a technology problem. While the technology tools and the things we're talking about are the things that IT leaders have to do to get better, than IT teams have to do to go faster, ultimately business problems, and the business has to have a seat at the table the whole time. They have to have a core and critical role in all of this work. It's not about building and delivering features faster because IT thinks it's important or a developer thinks it's important. Certainly the developer has a voice and a stake in this, but the business has to be, they have to have, what I would say, skin in the game. They have to be an active participant in the work. This has been true from the principles of Agile, with the idea of a product owner being part of the Agile team. But it's equally important, this hasn't changed, and it's hard for the business to be more to engage at a higher level. If they're coming from a traditional way of writing a long requirements document and waiting for someone to deliver it, this is a very different way. They have to have a very different way of interacting, and their level of commitment, they have to have a much higher commitment to the project on a day-to-day basis. So this has significant implications for the business as well. And I would go on to say these kind of transformations have a significant impact on leadership as well. It requires leaders to lead in a different way, and that's another talk. If you Google, I did a TEDx talk on digital leadership a year and a half ago or so. And so if you want to hear my thoughts on the importance of digital leadership, you Google it and I'm there.
Thanks for that answer, John. I think here's another question. I'll just quickly read it out. How do you handle specifications of functions or functionality which have to be released by QA prior to development? Do you have any automation in place?
Well, it's a great question. It's one that as I see the way people do this, they're writing when they write a new requirement. A lot of times, what they really do are writing requirements as in the form of a test case. The best practice or what's happening that's somewhat revolutionary is this idea of test-driven development or behavior-driven development, depending upon how you want to look at it, where the idea then is that rather than writing a requirement, I'm going to write a test, effectively write a test case. I'm going to write my requirement in such a way that it can easily be tested or turned into an automated test. And there's tools like Cucumber and others that can be used then to take that requirement and turn it into the test case. And so by shifting that activity up front, it really helps people understand what is it needs to get built, and it also how do I test it. And so I see that as happening as a way to help drive and enable the automation end to end. In the absence of that, then yeah, it creates a challenge where your automation engineers or people who are going to write the automated testing are always at some level playing catch up, and you've got to solve for how to get them involved early on so they can write their testing as early as possible.
Okay, thanks. Here's another question. First, thank you from Christoph who sent the question. I think the answer was satisfying. Another question. Business wants to know the end product before allowing IT to start, but IT is working agile. How do you work around this?
This gets to the precise challenge I mentioned earlier, that the business wanting, or the traditional mindset of I want to know the end product. I want to know exactly what you're going to build before you build anything. Because at the end of the day, the reality that we know is that in IT, we've built these applications too many times to realize that users only use 20% of the functionality, and are we building the right 20%? And so I think the point about the business and what they want is trying to get them to understand how to break that end product down into the specific pieces of value rather than what's the minimum viable product. Maybe get them to what's the minimum viable function that's part of the product. You may not be able to get to, where we are with minimum viable change, but a step towards that is what's the smallest piece of functionality or value we could deliver that will help to solve your business problem. Because what we may learn by shipping that is that what you thought, Mr. and Mrs. Business Leader, was the real value, real opportunity is really very different. I'll use a quick example. I mean, Amazon is a great example. Amazon started off as this business focused on digital retail around shipping and selling books, and they pivoted and started to sell retail everything. But now, what is Amazon? Where's Amazon's revenue? What's their big business at Amazon? It's not books, it's not retail. It's AWS. It's selling cloud infrastructure and cloud services. And so if you'd have started Amazon with, I have to have the whole product, I have to know everything that we're going to build, they'd have totally missed the opportunity. They'd have built the wrong thing. And so the incremental approach it unlocks potential, and I think that's the thing to teach the business and to work with them on.
All right. I think there's another one that just came in. I'll just read it out quickly. Sometimes small changes can have a massive negative impact on the development process of the application because changes like, for example, database changes have to be done. How do you handle this? When to implement small changes and when not?
That's also a really, really good question, and you're right. I would echo that as we've seen, and one of the things we've seen when we start working on our MVC, we're involving our back-end engineering team to assess the weight and the effort of it. And we break our MVCs or our sequence of changes down into chunks that we think we can manage and ship. And so it's an architectural problem. It's a challenge with organizing and planning. And it's something that you can't just make changes without understanding, what are the implications. And so one of the things we try to do as well when we make changes, when we think about future capabilities, is we try to make them, I want to say generic enough. I don't know if that's exactly the right word. But we try to make sure that we're building simple changes that, or we try to do things in a simple enough way that gives us flexibility over the long run, so we don't lock ourselves into one way or one issue or one way of doing it. An example was we wanted to release, and we think about scale too. We recently released in our planning capabilities this idea of having epics and child epics. And we deliberately said, look, let's put some limits around how complicated it is, because we were worried about it from infrastructure. If we have an infinite number of children for this kind of a structure, this could be a huge problem downstream. So we put some boundaries in place as to how we designed it. But this is indeed a challenge that we wrestle with, and it's one that there's a healthy tension between designing and architecting, and we need to do small changes fast. We have that tension, and we wrestle with it. And if you were to follow our issues or follow our discussions, you will see us wrestling with that internally.
All right. I think we're slowly running out of time. So, John, do you see anything you would like to address? Is something that was running into your chat box for the moment? Maybe we would have 1 minute more, but I think we're slowly coming towards the end.
I think there's one other question about about how we release on servers, and if you release on software or Photoshops or mobile apps, etc. And so it's about how you release them. And yeah, that's right. We are, at least the way we are focused, at least we optimize towards deploying and pushing to Kubernetes and pushing to containers. That's the we can support deploying to any OS or VM, and in fact we're actually working on capabilities in GitLab to support mobile application development for Android and iOS and others. And so you can push and deploy to those environments as well. It's not I'd have to look in our backlog as to where we're at with that, but we absolutely are thinking about how do we deploy to other environments as well. And so I think the other thing that I would have in closing is that we're gonna host a virtual round table sometime in the very near future. We'll have more time to have questions and do follow-up. So when we follow up after this webinar, we'll make an opportunity for people to attend or to join a virtual roundtable. And maybe even a physical roundtable when I come. If I come over to Europe, I would love to meet people, and I come over periodically, and I would love to spend time face to face at a meetup or whatnot. So yeah, there'll be more details in mail as a follow up if you're interested. And with that, I think I am done. We've gone a minute or so longer than planned, but check out the demo. Thank you all so very, very much. I appreciate the interaction, the opportunity to share a little bit of insight from what I've learned at GitLab.
Well, thanks, John. Thanks for taking the time to give us a ton of insights, and also for taking the time to really go deep into the questions that we had from the audience. From my point of view, it was very exciting. I think the audience would agree. So yeah, I think we're at the end. We have more than one full hour speaking about follow-up. Like I told before, we will send you a follow-up email containing a link to the webinar recording, and also with the slides, so you can check back, rewatch the session if you want to go through certain passages. So yeah, be sure to check your emails in the next days, and if you have additional questions, feel free to follow up with me, send them to me. I'm happy to forward those to John, and I guess John will be happy to answer those as well. So yeah, thanks again to everyone, and I think at this point I will close it. And yeah, have a nice day ahead. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.